So what type of physical activity should we be doing to lose the midsection weight?
We should do truly aerobic exercise. And aerobic means with air, which means that it's at an intensity low enough that we can breathe comfortably and supply the oxygen. Mm-hmm. So as soon as you start huffing and puffing, that's not a bad thing for short duration, but if you go and you do a 45-minute spin class every day and you're just huffing and puffing, you're going to make way too much cortisol.
Really?
Yes.
So you might be hurting your chances of losing the weight
yes.
if you're doing that intensive a workout every day.
Correct.
If you're doing a HIIT training 2-3 times a week for 45 minutes, is that okay? Or do you feel like that's still intense?
If it's 45 minutes, it's not HIIT.
Gotcha.
Yeah. HIIT, high intensity, means that it's so, to me, my definition.
It's like 10-15 minutes.
It's not, well, maybe the total duration would be 10-15 minutes. But if you do interval, high intensity interval training is what HIIT is, mm-hmm. then the intervals should be so intense you can't even do them for more than 30 seconds. Uh-huh. Like they should be so intense, provided you're fit enough to do that, of course. But if you do 30 seconds and then you do 30-second rest and then 30 seconds, you should be able to bring your heart rate up to maximum in maybe 4 or 5 intervals. Mm-hmm. That is HIIT. Okay, now you're done. Right. You've created your
5 minutes. Yeah.
Your positive hormones, your growth hormone to stimulate fat burning, your growth hormone to stimulate muscle building, to produce and to stimulate new brain synapses to enhance learning and focus. All the good stuff in the brain depends on hormones. And 2 of those hormones are human growth hormone and BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And those 2 hormones are necessary to make new synapses. Right? So your brain is constantly remodeling, and every time you learn something, whether you're 20 years old or 80 years old, you make new synapses. And the synapses you use, they get stronger. The ones that you don't use go away. Mm-hmm. But these 2 hormones, which some of the strongest ways to produce them is high intensity exercise and fasting, are pretty much required to build a brain and to learn.
Really? So what type of high intensity exercise are you doing on a weekly basis?
My favorite to really get the heart rate up is I go to my favorite mountain in close to where I live, where there's a trail, and it's like 4 miles around. And I walk a little bit, I jog a little bit. I walk a little bit, jog a little bit. Just kind of enjoying the movement. And my heart rate probably stays around 100 to 120, 130 maybe. And then there's some hills. And then I do some sprints up the hills. So now I push it a little bit. And 30-second push and my heart rate's 160. And then I walk a little, jog a little, there's another hill, and I push it a little bit more, and my heart rate hits 165, 170. And I might do that in 30 seconds, or it might take a minute to get to that heart rate, and then I'm done.
You do a few hills?
Yes.
What if you did 20 hills?
Then,
is that too much? A 10 to 30 second?
That might be okay if you're 20, 25 years old, you're an elite athlete, and that's part of your event. But if you're 45, 50, 60, and you just try to stay as healthy as possible, I think that's too much.
Really?
And in any event, it's unnecessary because it's not about the quantity. Quantity is good for fitness, but not necessarily for health.
Interesting. So you only need a few sprints every couple. Is this every day or every few days?
I would say it's no more than twice a week.
Twice a week
for the average person now, and we have to. If you're watching this, you have to understand if you're in the elite athlete category, or in the 50-year-old trying to stave off
Just living life.
degenerative disease.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So if you're more of a, if you're an athlete, even in your 40s and 50s, you could push it a little farther. If you're competing in stuff or doing triathlons or marathons or
Yeah.
just wanting to stay lean,
Yeah.
it's important to be doing that a little bit more.
Yeah. So there's no doubt. I mean, I talk a lot in my videos about moderation. Like you do these HIIT exercises, you do it twice a week, you keep it short. But obviously that doesn't apply to someone who has a goal in an event. If you're going after fitness, there is no substitute for punishing yourself.
Right. You got to do it.
Yeah. Because if you're going to perform in an event, you need to do something similar to that event at that level of intensity
Yeah.
and duration.
So fasting and high intensity exercise, but it's not doing CrossFit every day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Because that creates too much cortisol.
Correct.
Especially if you're older, past 30 or something, it's probably
Yeah.
not as good to do that. Is something like that, a 45 to 60 minute CrossFit type of training once a week, you think okay, or is it still creating too much cortisol?
I think once or twice a week for the average person, if you feel good, I think is fine.
Yeah.
But again, when I have people come in to my clinic, those are people who have been to 20 different doctors. They have tried vegan and carnivore and low carb and yo-yo dieting and gluten-free. They've done all that. So these are people with challenges. And now if you're a little frail, now that's where you really have to be careful and get everything right. But yeah, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you're feeling fine, then go for it. Do one or two of those spin classes. And what I would caution though is pay attention. Notice how your body is reacting. How do you feel after the class? Are you exhausted? Are you stiff in the morning? Do you have trouble getting out of bed? Do your joints hurt the next day? Then you're probably doing too much.
Doing too much, yeah. And what about, we talked about fasting a little bit here. What are the top 3 benefits of intermittent fasting or longer fasting, 24-hour, 48-hour fasting that you've seen in your research?
So number 1 is lowering insulin. And with that, lowering blood sugar, losing weight, etc. The other big thing is that you induce something called autophagy. But that's with longer fasting. Autophagy it's called autophagy stands for self-eating. And that's where if you're putting food in your body, if you're putting especially protein in your body, there's plenty of resources. Your body knows, hey, there's some more coming. I can just use that to build tissue and to do the stuff I need. But if you stop putting it in, now it becomes a very, very scarce resource. So now your body has to figure out where else can I get this? And that's where autophagy, self-eating, comes in. So now your body upregulates its recycling mechanisms.
How long does it take to fast before autophagy starts?
So again, that's what everybody asks, and it's not a black or white. It's a continuous, it's a gradient. I would say that it barely starts around 16 to 18 hours. That's where you get like a trickle, but then it increases pretty fast, where there's a significant change between 18 and 24 hours.
Interesting.
And then it sort of takes off from there. So 48 hours into it, it's very significant.
48 hours into it.
Yeah.
So the longer you can go every, extra few hours, it continues to self-eat.
Yes.
The
Yes.
fat stored in your body more and
Yes. Yeah. So the self-eating now, part of what it eats is fat, obviously, because you're not adding any fuel. But the key with autophagy is protein, because you need protein to build tissue, Your cells have so much of a lifespan, they break down, and then you have to make new ones. And you need protein for that. So when you don't add any now, you have to go look for some. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, that's where fasting is dangerous because you're going to eat up your muscles. The body is too smart for that because you need your muscles to go on the next hunt. So we have all these mechanisms to spare muscles, and that's why growth hormone increases also exponentially along with autophagy. And growth hormone is muscle sparing. It's basically telling the body, or one of the mechanisms that tell the body, don't use the muscle, go find something else. So now it gets much better at recycling these broken cells. It gets much better at finding any kind of resource like virus and bacteria and parasites that may also be made out of protein.
Really? And kind of eating those things, the bad things
Correct.
first. Interesting. What's the longest you've gone fasting?
The longest I've done is 5 days, or
No-
4.5.
No food, water only.
Just water.
Yeah, I've done 3 days.
Yeah.
And you see the benefits a lot after a
Yeah.
day and a half. You really start to see and feel the benefits.
Yeah.
By day 3, I went right up to 3, and I was like, okay, I was starting to get a little tired. And I think
Yeah.
I pushed it because I worked out twice, which
Yeah.
I'm probably not supposed to do, but I did like an incline walk for an hour, and which I don't recommend, but I was trying to be extreme.
Yeah, that's probably too much.
Yeah.
And this is where we come into this muscle sparing thing, that I'm all in favor of doing some exercise while you're fasting, because
Walking, though.
you're going to increase your ketones, you're going to increase your growth hormone, but if you're not adding any protein and you do something intense enough to break down muscle, now your body has to sort of juggle the resources. Like it has to repair those muscles, and where's the protein going to come from? So it might break down some other muscles to repair that.
Interesting.
Okay, I haven't seen specific research on this or anything. It's just kind of common sense. What would the body do?
Sure.
So I would exercise, but I would keep it to purely aerobic. I wouldn't even do HIIT, not even brief HIIT during those times.
Right. What did you do for those 4.5, 5 days?
I probably didn't do much of anything.
Right. Just
Probably
rest.
maybe a little bit of walking, but basically just my everyday activities.
Yeah. Did you feel pretty sharp after 2-3 days, or did you start to feel a little slower towards the end?
I don't feel as great as people tell me they feel.
Yeah, I feel so much energy.
Yeah, so I do okay. I don't feel any dramatic improvement in focus, but I do know that it happens because I get the testimonials, and I do know, especially for people who might have insulin resistance, when they fast, they're going to increase their ketones, which becomes the alternative brain fuel.
Right. And it also kind of helps heal certain things. If you've been driving the insulin, it's allowing that to recover more, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Your whole carbohydrate processing machine is recovering because you're not adding anything.
Right.
And one more thing about autophagy and fasting is for brain trauma. And this, I've hardly ever heard it spoken about, that the brain is kind of its own little world up there inside the cranium. We have the blood-brain barrier, and a lot of things that go on in the brain are different than the way they work in the body. So the reason, for example, that spinal cord injuries are so devastating is that the nervous system is really poor at repairing itself, right? It's encased in bone for a reason. It's not supposed to get damaged. You're not supposed to crack your skull or break your spine. And that tissue is a little different. It's sensitive. And it doesn't have the capacity to repair itself very, very well. But if you have a concussion, for example, you get some tissue brain trauma, you get some inflammation, and about the only way that the brain can clean that up is through autophagy, the self-eating, right? So when people have a brain trauma, traumatic brain injury, that's the number one time that they want to absolutely not have any sugar.
Really? Fast at that time?
Yes, and if they can throw in a 24-hour fast or something, then that's going to be huge for to reduce that inflammation. If you challenge your body, if you push it, if you do push-ups until you fail, like you get $1 million if you can do one more and you can't do it, that's pushing your body till it fails, to exhaustion. And now what's the message?